Welcome back, everybody, to
Woohoo!
Hoops HD, our something we've never done before. So this is our first annual Hoops HD Bracket Rundown Holiday Special. Did I get that right?
I
Uh,
think so. We do
uh,
bracket rundown. We're going to be doing one every week, I think, starting next week, but none like this. None like
no,
this.
not like this. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. First of all, up top with me is John Slika and John Titel. Down below, David Griggs are joining us from Bracketeer.org. We've got Rocco Miller. We might have one other person jumping in as a little late here. If he does, we'll introduce him at that point. But
Hey, Chad, just so
yeah.
you know, the warden is very angry with me. So if I lose Wi-Fi or get kicked off the broadcast,
Okay. Let's just keep going here. We've got what we've done today is we're going to do a little bit of a almost a selection Sunday type of bracket reveal. And I guess let me start with though by what type of bracket we're revealing tonight. And I'm going to begin by getting the screen share up here. If I'll just take a couple seconds to get this up, here it is. And I just randomly picked a conference. It looks like it's the MEAC is the random conference we picked for the night. One of our favorite leagues here at Hoops
and
HD.
swinging for the fences
Yes,
tonight.
big top conference. As those of you who are fans of the show know,
We said it was like nothing we've ever done before.
we've got a lot of different metrics that we look at during the course of our Hoops HD reports and our under the radar shows. We call the resume based metrics, the KPI, the ESPN strength of record. Our good friend, our Joby from our site here is the JNG ratings that you can find up top there. We also talk about a lot of the predictive metrics, the KenPom ratings, the BPI rating, the Sagarin ratings. Of course, there's the net rating. And what I did couple of years ago, we've been showing this for a few years now, is develop what we call the OAR. All I did was add up all 7 of those numbers, divide them by 7, get 363 results, and rank those 1 to 363. So those are the OARs for the MEAC right there that have been highlighted. What we did for tonight is I took that OAR list 1 through mid 50s or so, and then automatic bids down that, and I created a master seed list of 1 through 68 for an NCAA tournament bracket with one team from every conference, bracketed it up, and we are going to, over here on this screen here, reveal that bracket right here on our show.
Okay.
We're going to we're going to go through each of what the teams in yellow there. Those are the protected seeds, one at a time, the top 16 teams. After that, we'll go one line at a time until we get down to the first 4. We'll even have a little talk at the end, a little more than we normally do during our bracket rundown shows about the 13 through 16 lines, because we're not doing an under the radar podcast this week. We're not doing a Hoops HD report. We're just doing this. Did I cover everything?
I think so. There are some terms that you're going to hear during this show. If you're a first-time viewer, which you may be, our audience is growing. Chad, what is a protected seed? What is inside the bubble, outside the bubble, on the bubble? Is there anything else that we routinely use? First
Yeah.
ballot team, first ballot.
Protected seeds are the top 4 seed lines, so the top 16 teams. They're the teams that are projected to go to the Sweet 16. The term protected is kind of almost semi-meaningless. It just means that you're not supposed to be at a home court disadvantage in your first round game. Pretty meaningless, but it's a term that's used a lot out there. First ballot team is basically your top 30 to 36 teams. Those are teams that generally get into the tournament very quickly. Inside the bubble are teams that are pretty much in as of the moment. On the bubble, are you in, are you out? You're very close. Outside the bubble is, teams like those MEAC teams that we just looked at.
Yeah, very, very far outside the bubble.
But let's start revealing here so that I can start talking and the rest of our panel can start doing some talking here. And let's start with the number 1 team overall. Now, back-to-back weeks now, the Purdue Boilermakers have been the top team in both the AP and the coaches poll. So our number 1 team overall, of course, with the OAR is, of course, the UConn Huskies and not Purdue. Rocco, what do you think? UConn, number 1 overall, if we average all the metrics out.
Yeah, I mean, I think UConn deserves it from a resume comparison standpoint over Purdue. They've both been tested about equal amount of times. UConn has never had a game finish in single digits. They've dominated literally everybody, double digits or higher. You can point at that Alabama win as a very great win, as Alabama's probably in most people's top 10. You have several other great wins with Oklahoma State, Oregon, Iowa State. The list goes on. Florida, true road win. So there's plenty there to get them into consideration. And then I think just that pure dominance factor, I agree with putting them number 1.
Can I say one thing, Chad? We're not
Yeah.
necessarily guessing the committee or what we think it'll look like in March. We do have two selection committee guessing experts here. And I just wanted to ask Tytel, when you put and Rocco, when you put Rocco and Purdue next to each other, how would you rank them as far as you think what the committee's going to do?
I mean, UConn and Purdue, I assume.
Yeah, right.
What did I say?
Oh, I
said
would rank
Rocco.
Rocco ahead of Purdue. He's
You
been
said
good at
Rocco.
this all year.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Well, I'll tell you what.
No, I
let's
mean,
just-
I was
okay,
I
go
was
ahead.
talking as if we were comparing the two. I mean, Purdue obviously very, very strong. Similar quality wins. I don't like their best win as much. Gonzaga's a great win. Duke's a great win. I just think Alabama shows up a little bit higher. Also, you have that overtime game when they had to play Nebraska in overtime. They only beat Davidson by 8. They've got a lot more close calls than UConn, and that's kind of where you're splitting hairs, but I think that's what it would come down to in a real comparison.
Well, Tytel, what might be a bit of a shock, even more than UConn number 1 overall here. Purdue is not number 2 overall. It's actually Houston. Your thoughts on that? Let me pull up both UConn and Houston here. Let's put Purdue on the screen also. Actually, Purdue and Houston on the screen here.
Bit of a shock. I think Houston deserves credit for going on the road against teams like the Ducks and Virginia, but Purdue's just beaten so many good teams. I mean, like Marquette, West Virginia, Gonzaga, Duke, the Seminoles who are having an off year, Minnesota, at Nebraska. Like, I understand they're not all tier 1, but that's a lot of tier 1, Chad.
It is, but Sliko, I think maybe when you look at it here, just for a quick glance, you've got the two true tier 1 road wins on Houston side. They don't have a Purdue side. They're only neutral.
I think
court over there.
Houston is slightly more weighted as far as tier 1 wins, even though they do have a lot more tier 4 wins that are probably propping up the win totals right here. I would have given Purdue the slightest of edges just because they are still unbeaten for the time being.
Yeah, I personally would have as well. I don't think I could have had Purdue, Houston over Purdue, but actually the predictive metrics here really heavily influenced that, where they're number 1 in both the BPI and the KenPom ratings. Just with that great adjusted offensive, great adjusted defensive numbers there.
Right. And they win in the Virginia and won. It's very possible they'll be the only team that wins at Virginia. It's going to be hard for Purdue to get a win better than that. Maybe they'll get one that's as good. That ranks up there as one of the best wins that anybody's managed all season, minus perhaps Alabama's win at Houston.
Yeah.
Number 3 is, of course, Purdue. I don't think that we could put that they're going to get pushed out any lower than that. And at the end of the day, they're in the South playing in Louisville, whether they're number 2 or number 3 overall. So really would only affect potentially, future matchups down the line there. But Sliko, let me go back to here. Number 4 overall, surprising you that they came in as the Kansas Jayhawks, are defending national champions.
I think for a while we were expecting a team like Tennessee to be on the 1 line, given that they had actually beaten Kansas down at Atlantis. Since then, Kansas has had a bit of a better track record. Granted, Tennessee stumbling at Arizona is not a major crime. Of course, we've said repeatedly that is the kind of game that if you're going to be a number 1 seed, you want to be winning on the road against a protected seed type team like Arizona. But when you look at what Kansas did on the road against Missouri and just absolutely smashed them.
I don't expect that Missouri win to be a tier 1A win at the end of the day where it is right now. But it is there right now, and they are number 4 in both the polls as well. So
one of the things about Missouri, and I know that this doesn't show up in what we're doing. I mean about Kansas. Just go to someone else. I can't keep anyone.
Let's look at the number 5 overall team. This will be down to the 2 line. We start filling in the 2 line here. And it is the team that Tennessee team that we just mentioned here. And Rocco, let me go back to you. Tennessee coming to number 5 overall. Does that shock you?
Doesn't shock me because you're factoring in the metrics, right? And I think Tennessee's crushing it in predictives. They're the number 1 adjusted defense. I can tell you that. And when they beat teams, they really beat them bad and suffocate their offense. I mean, look at their Q4 games. Nobody's scored over 49 points in those Q4 games, and that really, in a funny way, will help your net a lot. Even a really good Florida Gulf Coast team, they punished to that level, and Butler as well. So that will really elevate the predictives. But I do think Me personally, I would have them. I would still have them on the 2 line, just lower on the 2 line, because you can't count out the fact they lost a semi home game in Nashville to Colorado by double digits. They did lose to Arizona. Nothing wrong with that on the road, but in general, we've seen, and that squeaked out a game against Maryland as well. So I think, when the games where they played people at their own weight class, they're kind of almost like a 50-50 team. And they're getting a lot of brownie points for beating up on the teams that are inferior.
Title number 6 overall is your Arizona Wildcats. You like them right here in the 2 line?
Love them right here, Chad, especially in Vegas. I hope to be there in person for that one. Great win over Tennessee. They still have the Creighton win, which now that Kalkbrenner's healthy should start getting up in value. Indiana might be going down with the Xavier Johnson injury. It's weird to see how these victories, you mentioned Missouri might become a non-tier 1 win. It's interesting to see how these shape up. But yeah, they're playing great with Ballo and Tubelis, or some people call them Ballo. But so far, so good. I like this team.
All right. Griggs, you want to try again?
I guess.
Let me ask you about the number 7 team, another Pac-12 team, or UCLA.
Yeah, I mean, a really good defensive team. They have the 2 losses as you pull them up here early in that exempt event, but they were to Baylor and Illinois, who are both high caliber teams. They were in both games. I don't think either loss really sets them back. Perhaps it was arguably a missed opportunity, but the way they've been playing so far, like they go to Maryland and they absolutely blow a really good Maryland
Crushed
team
them
off the floor in Maryland. And then they go to MSG and beat Kentucky 63-53. That's a hell of a week. You got both those wins away from home in about a 72-hour period and looked as good in that 72 hours as any team has all year. In looking at the rest of their schedule all the way into maybe the game, maybe the Arizona State-Arizona trip, I think they win all those.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. I mean, I just don't see a team there that I think could beat them the way they're playing right now. And after those 2 hours, that Arizona trip, there might be not anybody left there that could beat them all season until the last game of the season.
Yeah.
So,
They were in that game against Illinois, lost it. They were in there against Baylor, lost it. That was just a tactical error on Baylor's part because, man, did it make them mad.
let's Salika, right after 2 line is Alabama, the Crimson Tide, who we've already mentioned them a few times, haven't picked up some notable wins already this season.
They get the slight edge over Virginia here, thanks to their win at Houston right here.
Right.
And then they also had that quadruple overtime win against North Carolina and the PK Invitational back on Thanksgiving weekend. It'll offset losses against UConn and Gonzaga right here. They still have some decent tier 2 wins against Memphis, Michigan State, which could potentially go up to tier 1 as the season goes on.
Yeah, and this is a team that I mean, that win at Houston is going to be talked about all the way until Selection Sunday at this point.
Yeah. A really big road game coming up this week at Mississippi State with a bloated record, and I think who cracked the rankings today. So Alabama with a chance. If they win that, they're going to get a lot of credit for winning that, at least for now.
All right. Let's go to the 3 line here. Let's start this title. Let me start this line off with you here as another SEC team comes in, our 3rd SEC team already with Arkansas.
Man, I'm glad Joey's not on this show. You got to get Virginia in here sometime. But no, Arkansas deserves a lot of credit, not just for beating a powerhouse like Louisville, of course, but also the fact that they're doing it with like their 2nd team now. Brazil's gone for the year with an ACL. Smith is injured. They've missed Graham and Mitchell for a couple of games. So I don't know how they're doing it with like smoke and mirrors down there, but Musselman's getting it done.
Yeah, and only the 1 loss to Creighton back when Creighton was a good team.
Yeah.
We may have been answers on that as we go further in the season here. But Rocco, let me go back to you for number 10 overall. Do we finally get them? No, we don't. It's actually Gonzaga above Virginia as well here.
Yeah, and I can understand to a degree there. I have Gonzaga 10, but not in this order. So I'm okay with their landing spot. We've seen holes in Gonzaga for the first time in a long time at this stage of the season, and their blowout losses to Texas and Purdue. I thought their Baylor game was a coin flip. They lose that one by 1, but But obviously, in more recent times, going down to Birmingham and putting a 10-point win on Alabama to get revenge for the Seattle loss last year against the same Tide team said a lot about where Gonzaga is going and what some of the stuff they've cleaned up. They went down to a 7-man rotation. And, I think they're looking good for going forward. Now, that just with WCC games ahead, they should be the Gonzaga of old. In terms of how you see them, I think it's just they'll be big Alabama and Kentucky and Michigan State fans the rest of the way to try to get back closer to a 1. But this is where they belong right now, I would say.
Agree.
Agreed. And Stalika, let me ask you here about another team. It's still not Virginia. We've actually got Texas coming in as our next 3rd seed at number 11 overall. I see a lot of shaking heads with no Virginia in here yet.
This is
And
the
still,
OAR. This is an objective process. It isn't.
And this is still a team with an interim coach, I might add. Granted, they got off to a bit of a shaky start when they had to go overtime to beat Rice, but ever since the Stanford and Louisiana wins, things seem to have settled down on the 40 acres for Texas right here. They'll still have wins of note against Gonzaga and Creighton, but I'm also getting a program in chat here that is saying no true road wins for the Longhorns yet.
You're seeing that with a
4
lot of
games.
teams, Griggs, just because we're still early enough in the season that you look at Texas, they haven't played a true road game yet, so they
Yeah,
can't
they
have a
haven't.
true road win. So
Yeah, they've played a lot of home games.
they played Illinois in a neutral court, but they've got a road game at Tennessee still in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. So there is a big road game on here on the scheduled non-conference.
Yeah. I
Let's,
think Virginia's done more.
Griggs, let me stick with you. Number 12. We still don't have Virginia. Instead, it's Baylor
We're
coming
gonna
in
have
here.
to look at Virginia's profile and try and just assess why they're not in yet. That being said, I really like Baylor, UCLA, a team that's they've beaten 2 teams that are already in the field. So if you're looking at Occam's razor, that looks pretty good. The loss at Marquette, that aside, you're not really holding your nose at anything here. I think they're really good, probably belong about where we have them. They're certainly going to have their chances the rest of the way at really big wins playing in the conference they did. But one of their losses was a neutral floor game against that Virginia team that still isn't in the field. I don't know.
And that's one of those things here. We don't even have Virginia in yet, and yet Baylor, who lost to them, is in ahead of them.
Yeah.
Let's Taitel, let me go back to you here at the 13 line. There they are, Virginia's top of the 4 line. Let me compare them to that Baylor team that beat them right here on the screen, and let's figure out what's wrong with this Virginia team and why they're not ranking that high.
Well, I saw that Virginia Baylor game firsthand, and I thought that Virginia was easily going to be a top 3 seed tonight because they looked like it that night. Obviously, a couple losses over the past couple weeks, so I get it, albeit by a total of 10 points, including 1 on the road and 1 against one of the best teams in the country. Certainly, plenty of chances. Not so much with Albany this week, but they start some serious conference play on New Year's Eve, and I know the ACC is down. Joby talked about how it's important for the ACC teams to get non-conference wins because there's not going to be as impressive conference wins, but I think Tony Bennett has things going just fine, so I'm not panicked at all about this team and think they will go nowhere but up.
Yeah, and if you look at it, I mean, actually, a lot of the metrics here, you've got the net at 18, the KPI 23, the predictives. Other than Joby, who's a Virginia grad, is JG has eyes, maybe a little biased there. But the metrics are kind of saying they belong as a 4 seed, aren't they?
And maybe part of that is just sort of deep within the circuitry of some of those predictive metrics. Not blowing out Florida State. Playing Maryland Eastern Shore and Monmouth, who are really poor, those were dominant wins, but it is an adjusted efficiency. You don't get as much credit as a standard efficiency. I don't know. I'm just trying to explain why the metrics aren't predicting them where Joby has them. I think Joby's closer to correct, as biased as he is.
Let's go ahead here. Rocco, number 14 overall. We've got Duke. Time to get the Blue Devils in there finally.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good spot for Duke. You know, I think we'd all agree they're pretty solid, but they are what their resume is as well. So, you know, we have to account for that 11-point loss at Wake Forest the last time we saw them. Obviously, they look great against Iowa at MSG. Iowa takes one of the craziest losses of the decade or maybe the century, and now Iowa's metrics are all thrown off. So who knows? But they also have Ohio State wins and a nice Xavier neutral win in Portland. Again, it's one of those teams eye test wise, they're like certainly protected seed talent wise. They're just going to have to continue backing it up to stay in this range. But I think we give them the benefit of the doubt for just having the three knocks on their profile, 2 of them against really good teams, and then 1 of them a true road loss. So I think so far they're being forgiven.
And Salika, number 15 overall. How about West Virginia, a team that I didn't even think I thought was would be the bottom of the Big 12 heading into the season, and here they are as a protected seed in December.
I alluded to this
Oh.
last week. They're inflated by a net, which is up at 11. Part of that is going to be because they blew out Pittsburgh, who is going to be a lot better than what we had expected at the beginning of the year. You couple that with a win against a UAB and also a win against Florida. I'm not sure why they are still showing as a tier 2 at this point. What West Virginia is doing is they're blowing out most of their opponents. The only losses they have are their true road game at Xavier and also the game against Purdue that was during the Phil Knight tournament.
Yeah, Griggs, this is a team that just made the top 25 this week, coming in at number 24. Yeah, a protected seed. This was one of the ones that shocked me when I read the numbers, actually.
Yeah, and I think Stalika did a good job explaining, why some of their predictive metrics are that high. But like, I don't.
The net especially. The net's
yeah, the net especially. Like, but the win at Pittsburgh. Yeah, Pitt. I don't think they have any more home losses. They're fairly decent overall, so they're getting a lot of a boost from what really was just a dominant win in that. But I ask our bracket committee guessing experts what they think of that resume. That's not a protected seeded resume.
I see Tytel shaking his head. I see Rocco shaking his head.
I'm not a selection committee guessing expert, and I know that.
I think you got to beat somebody that's solidly in the field to even sniff a protected seed. They don't have that.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It surprises me how high some of the metrics have them. Obviously, like blowouts will help that, but yeah, they don't even have a quad 1A win. 2 opportunities, they lost both those games pretty convincingly. Xavier by 10, Purdue by 12, and maybe down the road they'll be better. The Big 12 is unbelievably loaded. There's just going to be wars night in, night out. So if they are this good, they'll be able to prove it. That's nice for Mountaineer fans. So we won't have to debate this for very much longer. But I do think what they've done, I don't know, you could argue them to be like all the way down in the first 4 in, first 4 out versus like a second seed. Because there's nothing to really hang your hat on.
Last of our protected seeds is Auburn. Tytel, how about Auburn as a protected seed? A little better than West Virginia.
I think maybe this might be a couple of weeks out of date. Auburn has not had a great December, as best I can recall. Let's see if we can quickly prove it on the old.
They lost at USC into Memphis. Yep.
Both by single digits, both not at home. I get it. A 1-point win over Northwestern while scoring 43 certainly doesn't impress me. The strength of schedule, mediocre at best. Obviously, there's some metrics that are very high there, but I had Auburn a little farther down the road on this one.
Yeah, as you look at these metrics here, one of them, this is the old RPI formula that is now very out of date. We do still show those numbers. That was not factored into the OAR, though. That metric was not factored in, but the KPI of 11 was factored in, for example, and the KenPom is 16. A couple of pretty high numbers there. From here on out, we're going to go a whole entire seed line at a time, as opposed to one team at a time. And Griggs, let me start with you, as we're going to reveal all 4 of the 5 seeds at once here, and tell me what you think of these 4 teams, other than the fact that probably all 4 of them belong above West Virginia and Auburn.
Yeah, okay. Let's just get that out of the way before I even see them.
We've got Wisconsin, Maryland, Indiana, and North Carolina on this line.
I really like
and 3 Big Ten teams and 1 ACC.
Yeah. I really like Wisconsin a lot. I was big on them coming into the year. I was a little surprised they weren't getting a little more love. I'm also really impressed with what Maryland has done. Indiana and North Carolina, I'm not as sold on. Like when you look at this, the wins at Marquette and Iowa are really good. Obviously, Maryland being on this line, good. I think the win against USC, while USC's down in the net, I think that they're going to go up. They did not exactly compete with Kansas, and like Wake Forest beating them in Madison was a bit of a surprise. But I think a 5 seed's about right. As far as Maryland goes, I really like that win at Miami. I realize there isn't much else there. It's a little bit of an empty calories resume, but the one win they have, I think, is really good.
Right, a 3-point loss to Tennessee, a 5-point loss
Yeah.
to Wisconsin too. I think those factor in.
And for the performance or for the predictive metrics, they're going to get quite a bit of credit, even though they lost those games.
The other two teams on this line here, Rocco, Indiana, and North Carolina. Again, there's some good stuff. I guess maybe a few more losses, and that's why they're below West Virginia's and Auburn's. I still don't get that, but
Yeah, I mean, West Virginia and Auburn are pretty extreme in my opinion. But I do think, you know, you can watch Indiana. Their 3 losses, of course, are Arizona and Kansas are 2 of the 3, and then at Rutgers, where everybody loses. It's kind of like I think the jury's still out. They looked great in the North Carolina win. I mean, that final score was 12, but they beat them by like 25. I mean, that was all garbage time makeup points for North Carolina. I think on the Carolina side, you know, because of the fact that game was at Indiana, their other losses, I think, are very explainable. Virginia Tech in a true road game. Obviously, Iowa State's tricky on a neutral, and Alabama went 4 overtimes. Same kind of case for them. I like keeping them in this 4 to 6 range because they could actually end up being Final Four contenders. They could also slip further. We don't know.
right, let's take a look at the 6 seeds here. And Tytel, let me go to you here as I pull them up. We've got Virginia Tech, Ohio State, Xavier, and Miami. Thoughts on any of those or all of them?
I will leave Xavier for the other John, of course, even though
Okay.
I saw them beat Georgetown, but frankly, I think the 5 of us could beat Georgetown at this point. I like Virginia Tech and Ohio State up here. Miami, a little recency bias, but certainly there are some solid ACC schools, one of which is on the left here. 3 top tier 1 wins. Losing to Charleston on the road is bad, but it's by 2 and it's to a good Charleston team. Losing at BC this year, that's almost inexcusable though, right, guys?
Pretty much.
Almost. That was almost an automatic disqualifier for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Ohio State there. Stalika, I'll put Xavier and Xavier and Miami both up here for you. And your thoughts on your team getting in here at this point. The home win over West Virginia and not much else on the win side, though.
Well, it's a tier 3 win, but a win is still a win as far as league play goes here against Seton Hall. That was the first time that Xavier really had to win a rock fight. Don't be deceived by that score right there. Xavier did not have their best shooting performance and did manage to play one of their better defensive games overall against the Pirates just to hang on right here. Now, as far as our other number 6 seed right here in Miami, they're one of the reasons why we took so long to get Virginia, and that they beat the Hoos at home. And that win against Central Florida on the road is quietly starting to look a little bit better. It does check off a box as far as winning a true road game right here. And that win against Rutgers is also going to continue to pull some weight.
Stalika, your thoughts on coming up? Your Xavier team is at St. John's coming up here in a couple nights, and then New Year's Eve hosting UConn.
Well, you want to talk about changing speeds right here. They're going from rock fight straight to Mach 5 right here against the Johnnies. Granted, St. John's is going to be coming off of a loss at Villanova where they had the 9-point lead and then fell behind by 9 points in the blink of an eye right here. So we'll see how this game goes right after Christmas break. And then you got the big one against UConn on New Year's Eve. So if Xavier loses this one by double digits at home, I'm not seeing too many other upset opportunities for the Huskies, for example.
All right. Let's jump to the 7 line here, and who we're up to. I think Rocco, I think I'm up to you. If I could type in number 7, there it is. We got Kentucky, St. Mary's, Memphis, and Mississippi State. Did we lose Rocco? I think we lost
think we
Rocco. We're
did.
gonna try to get him back. So Griggs, while we try to get Rocco back, how about Kentucky, St. Mary's, Memphis, and Mississippi State on the 7 line?
I'm really impressed with how Memphis has been playing. I've been sort of a critic of theirs for, well, several years. But I really like what they're doing this year. They look really consistent. Love the win against Auburn. And overall, it's just watching them play. They look really good. They were right in there. I hate to praise them for losses at Alabama. I had a chance to win that game. And I just think they're playing really well now. I'm a little surprised that metrics wise, they're all the way up on the 7 line, but like if I'm ranking teams based on how good I think they actually are, I might consider Memphis for this high. Kentucky is Kentucky. It is now after Christmas. This is normally when Kentucky really kicks it into gear. I know that they've been, at least to by their fan standards, a little disappointing, but how bad was it really? They were in there with UCLA. They had a chance to beat Michigan State. The only team that really ate their lunch was Gonzaga. So, this is about where they belong right now. But I think Kentucky's going to get better as the year goes along.
Tell me about the other 2 teams. St. Mary's and Mississippi State also on this line. The Gales with the nice win over San Diego State, but already 2 tier 3 losses. And then Mississippi State, I kind of think there might be a paper tiger, but they're up to number 20 in the nation.
No, I'm going to dive into the Bulldogs, if I may, on the right. So I think that this is one of those injury situations where I'm going to focus on Shaquille Moore, their junior guard, who's been solid. When he's healthy, they beat Marquette and Utah neutral site. The last 2 games he missed, they beat Nicholls State at home by a whopping 2 points and lost by 6 at a neutral site to Drake, who, granted, is not a tier 4 loss, just tier 2. But I think when he gets healthy, he's not like an All-American, but he's the glue guy and the difference maker. And with him healthy, they're 10-0.
Okay. Let's take a look at the 8 line here. And Salika, let me go back to you. We've got Iowa State, San Diego State, Kansas State, and those undefeated New Mexico Lobos at the 8 line.
Yeah, I think it's time to start giving a little more respect towards the Lobos right here. They've continued their unbeaten streak, and finally Richard Pitino gets a win against his old man, Rick Pitino, when the Iona Gales had a layover game at the pit right here. It's also, you're wondering how they're going to compare to, let's say, their conference mate in San Diego State right here. Now, what the Aztecs have done, don't forget, they've already beaten Ohio State in the Maui Invitational, but their only other win in the top 2 tiers was at Stanford, who's probably going to end up falling to tier 3 at the rate they're going.
Yeah, I think we got Rocco back. Rocco, welcome back. I'll bring the board back up to show you what we've revealed that you might have missed if you're back with us.
I am. Yes.
Okay. Can you see us, Rocco? I know it's raining very hard where you're at, but you can.
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, good.
Okay. Rocco, we were just showing the 8 line here. I think you missed the 7 line, which had Kentucky, St. Mary's, Memphis, and Mississippi State on it. But the 8 line, we're just talking about the 2 Mountain West teams in Mexico and San Diego State. But let's talk about the other 2 teams here, a pair of Big 12 teams in Iowa State and Kansas State on the 8 line.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree on Iowa State or Kansas State being this high. I think, Kansas State, from what I can recall, here, thanks for pulling that up. First of all, Kansas State, their best wins, Nevada and LSU, both down in the Cayman Islands tournament. Not especially that they have a win over the field yet. Obviously, Big 12 will provide that. Going to Butler, lose by 14, also kind of reassured that they're very either bubble-licious or maybe not quite a tournament team yet. So I have no idea why they'd be 7 unless they're just blowing out other Q4 games, as we've mentioned on other profiles. And then Iowa State, they've got the Carolina win, which is great. I think the Villanova win could age like fine wine with them getting healthy finally. But besides that, we don't know. The game against Iowa was just not competitive. They were down by like 30 at halftime. So again, I think Iowa State's a nice story. Osuna is an amazing shot blocker from St. Bonaventure. But again, the Big 12 is going to be rugged. I think by the end, we're only going to get 7 at most in the tournament. And these 2 could easily be 2 that don't get in.
Yeah, there's plenty of time for these teams like this. to fall right out of there. But
How are they
Uh,
even out? Yeah, Iowa State has looked good at times. Kansas State, I just don't even understand.
well, I'll tell you what, Kansas State, the 11-1 overall record, giving them good resume-based metrics, a 27, a 20, and a 31. And that's what's pulling them up into the 31 range, up to 31 overall and the 8 line here.
They lost
Uh,
It's not the fancy uniforms for Kansas
Mm-hmm.
State, the lavender tops and the purple shorts.
that would pull their metrics down.
I'll tell you what, we're going to start actually seeing some potential first round matchups if the tournament was, say, and this was the bracket as we go to the 9 line here. And Salika, let me bring them up for you here. And here's our one of the first surprises, our first under the radar team, and it's not College of Charleston, it's Florida Atlantic out of Conference USA getting in, along with Oklahoma, Illinois, and Marquette. So
Yeah,
Salika, go ahead.
I was starting to wonder if Sam Houston was going to be the first under the radar team right here, but the Owls have actually been in the top 15 in the net themselves right here. They had the win against Florida, which just because it's a true road win, it's going to be in tier 1 for now. Other than that, they're also beating people like Drum for the most part. Their only loss was a true road game at Ole Miss back on November 11, but they've been on a winning streak ever since that point. I think the major surprise here is seeing Illinois down at the 9 line here, but they're all over the place. 1 minute they're beating UCLA and Texas on a neutral floor. The other minute they're getting beaten like a drum at home against Penn State, getting beaten like a drum against Missouri in the bragging rights game.
Yeah, they have been, but I mean, the UCLA Texas wins are
Yeah.
really going to help carry this team a long way. Tytel, you're nodding your head. You any thoughts on them? I know we also saw Marquette and one other team on this line. Let's pull Marquette up real quick here.
Yeah, it's a shame Matt's not here to defend the Golden Eagles, but obviously beating Baylor by 26 is your signature win that few teams can match. Not loving their 2-4 against the board so far, but they do have scheduled some very tough teams and lost to them by like single digits across the board. So they're very close to perfection, and obviously they'll get plenty of Big East tests coming up. Not so much with Georgetown on January 7th, but the big one when UConn comes to town on the 11th. And like fine wine, I think the Creighton win will age well.
Yeah, and we got the Oklahoma Sooners here. Maybe on the strength of those predictive metrics, just put them right here on that 9 line. Griggs, what's your thought on the Sooners with tier 2 heroes here?
I guess my first thought, and this is not what you're looking for, is for whatever reason, these computers must love Florida, to get Oklahoma and Florida Atlantic way up here for beating them. Maybe this is right. I will say this for Oklahoma, like there isn't anything really that jumps out major tier 1, but there's a lot of decent here. Nebraska, Seton Hall, Ole Miss, all decent teams, beating them all on neutral sites. Same with Florida, hanging in with a really good Arkansas team. The loss to Sam Houston, while Sam Houston not a brand, still a really good team, and they didn't really get blown out by any of their games. And all 3 of those teams are either good or either playing well now or were good at the time. So yeah, maybe this is kind of 9-ish when as I talk through it like that.
Okay, there they are again, Florida Atlantic, Oklahoma, Illinois, Marquette on that 9 line. Rocco, if we have you back, let me pull up the 10 line and some potential matchups as well. We've got Arizona State, TCU, Missouri, and Utah State here on the 10 line.
That's fascinating. I think Arizona State's wins are really kind of impressive. Obviously, losing by 100 to San Francisco doesn't help, but that's what the metrics. That's more of a metrics issue than a resume issue. I still think what Arizona State's been able to do has really been impressive. I think Missouri's blowout over Illinois certifies them as a tournament team for now. I don't know exactly where to put them, but 10 seems okay. Utah State in every game except for their 2 losses has looked outstanding, but the 2 losses make you scratch your head. I guess that's still good enough to get in. They came out here and blew out San Francisco in the Warriors arena, so maybe that's looking better than it used to. And then TCU, I think, has so much upside. We had them probably close to protected seed to start the year. I think they're going to just keep playing their way back up to that with everybody healthy, and they're really kind of clicking lately. So yeah, TCU definitely belongs in the field. I think they're just going to climb from here.
Ty, let me go back to you. So 3 out of the 4 11 seeds before we get to the first 4. We have Northwestern,
Yes.
Creighton, and yes, inside the bubble above the last of the at-large teams, Sam Houston State as well. But how about Northwestern and Creighton to start with? Let me pull them both up.
I think you got Creighton playing not too far from home in the Midwest, so that could give them a nice advantage. Plus the fact that Kalkbrenner seems healthy and well. Northwestern, hard to explain. Like, I still can't believe they beat Michigan State. I know this is not a great year for Izzo, and I know Malik Hall's been hurt, but I was still very impressed by that win, which is why it's way up there in the tier 1. Losing to Pitt by 29 is a little harder to explain, but that will bring their ranking down a bit. And it's a shame they lost to Auburn. They were in it till the end, as you can tell.
They were.
Griggs, I mentioned Sam Houston, the second under the radar team, still no College of Charleston, who is on the verge of breaking the top 25, but Sam Houston in there with the wins at Utah and at Oklahoma.
Yeah, and when you look at the where is it on here? The strength of record 21st, and of course it is. Like they won at Utah, they won at Oklahoma. They didn't beat them at home. They went there and won. Texas State, while not very good, it's still hard to win there. I think when you're 4-2 in true road games and 2 of those wins are Utah and Oklahoma, your strength of record is going to be really high. What pulled them down, it looks to me, was more so the predictive than it was the merit.
Really, the Sagarin and the KenPom, the BPI likes them. The Sagarin and KenPom don't.
Yeah. This is a very good defensive team. I think they've lifted a lot of weight. I would argue they've lifted more weight than West Virginia. I don't know. Again, when they get in the WAC play, you're talking about some pretty good teams. New Mexico State, despite the off the court issues, are pretty good. Grand Canyon, pretty good. But yeah, this is a team that has done what they need to do to make a run at landing inside the bubble. And I think that they can get there. Ask our committee guessing experts what they think.
Well, Rocco, what do you think on them?
I mean, I'm impressed. I agree with the way you broke down the resume. I think it's all legitimate. I think the issue is the WAC is very deep, and we're not even halfway through the season, and I think the odds of them going through the WAC and only losing once or twice are very, very slim, and it's unfortunate because if they played in a crappier league like they used to, like if they were still in the Southland, I think they could get there. I just don't think they could do it in this WAC. This WAC is tough.
Stalika, our first of our 2 first 4 matchups comes in at the 11 line here. And for reasons you'll see when we get to the other first 4 matchup, it is a in-conference battle between Penn State and Michigan State.
And they would try to break that up if they could, but I guess they couldn't.
Well, like I said, for reasons that will become clear in a few moments here, why 2 Big Ten teams have to play each other in this game? Penn State and Michigan State, Stalika. Here they are.
I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that the reason is because there is going to be a third and maybe even a 4th Big Ten team later on right here.
There are still 2 spots left. But go ahead. What about these 2 resumes, though?
Yeah, Michigan State is another team that's all over the place right here. They got a nice win against Kentucky towards the beginning of the year, a win against Penn State, who's been looking better and better. Of course, that loss, it's really going to be weighing them down. Not the Northwestern game so much, but the Notre Dame loss, because the Irish have just been frankly pathetic this year.
Yeah.
But as far as what Penn State has done, the win against Illinois is going to validate their profile right here. But other than that, all they really have, the Nittany Lions, are going to be the Butler win, as well as a Colorado State win that would have been better last season.
Yeah, let me, Griggs, let me show you the reason why Penn State and Michigan State, we play each other the first 4. Here's our other first 4 game coming to the 12 line, the West region. It's Rutgers, another Big Ten team against Oklahoma State. My Scarlet Knights barely making it in.
Yeah, my preseason dark horse, who I am no longer riding this dark horse. I'm a little surprised Okie State is in the field. And like that, is that their resume?
No, that's not. I'm getting it fixed. There it is.
Okay.
Off the strength of win over Sam Houston. Go ahead.
Yeah, at home. I don't know what in the world that's based on. I don't see any NIT wins on this profile. That's what I think of Oklahoma State. I guess we're going to get to some of the ones that were just left out. I'll say this about Rutgers, and I know that the metrics and the computers don't pick up on this, they at least look really good. They went into Ohio State, had a chance to win. Miami, a chance to win. Those are two really, really difficult places to play. They had a chance to win both of them. Seton Hall, right in the game. The only game that really has you holding your nose here is Temple. So I hate to praise a team based on their losses, but Rutgers looks like a tournament team at least. If
And
they're
both-
even if their
and
resume doesn't.
both Mulcahy and McConnell were out for that Temple game, so they were that
Okay.
there's an injury asterisk on that Temple game at least.
Right.
Not in the other three really.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. But I mean, I think Rutgers is much better than their resume. But if you're asking me to justify selecting them based on their resume, it's kind of hard to do.
Well, let me ask the Titeli, the selection committee guessing expert here. Do you think these are tournament resumes right now? Either one of these?
I can poke holes at both of them. The 310 non-conference strength of schedule is a huge gaping wound in the Rutgers resume, but
Well, it'll get better when they play Coppin State. It might go to
it can only
308.
get better. Thank God. And I'm telling you, I watched that Ohio State game, like they had it won until they didn't. And Seton Hall, like I hate to think, but I remember saying right after they lost to the Buckeyes, like that win, that loss could keep them out of the tourney. Right now, apparently it hasn't, but I'm telling you, it's razor thin.
Yeah, I think we got Rocco back again. The first four teams: Penn State, Michigan State, Rutgers, Oklahoma State. Before I actually go to the remainder of the teams, which would all be automatic bids, I want to pull up the top four teams out. Ask if any of these surprise you or that they got left out here. UAB actually our top team out, followed by UNLV, Iowa, and Texas Tech. How about Eastern Illinois crushing Iowa's tournament chances here?
Well, you want to talk about
I was
strength
asking-
of record?
I was-
Taking
Ro-
a little bit of a dive. Oh, sorry,
Rocco.
Rocco.
Yeah, I'm here. No, I think UNLV probably with only one loss would be in the field for me. But yeah, plenty of reasons to leave Iowa out. Texas Tech hasn't really picked up a big win or a good win, and then I would say UAB that hasn't done anything on the road really, besides their neutral tournament win. It was a very poor tournament where they were only really able to play Georgia. They blew them out, which is great, but I don't think it's going to matter much by the end. So they're going to have to earn their bid in conference or just win the conference tournament, which I do think they could repeat as Conference USA champions. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch not only UAB but FAU, who you've already talked about, and of course North Texas, who's surging.
And Western Kentucky always in the mix in Conference USA as well. So it's gonna be a fun conference.
Charlotte's good too. Yep.
Yeah, there's that Iowa profile, and you just look at this. They had Iowa State at Seton Hall,
Yeah.
a neutral court win over Clemson. Nothing bad. Then you just look at this, one of the worst home losses we've seen in recent memory, losing a home game where they were favored by over 30 points to Eastern Illinois. It was
Iowa can bounce back from that. They're certainly good enough to do it, and they'll certainly have the opportunities. But that was a historic loss. It might be the worst loss that we've ever seen on anybody's resume that actually lands inside the bubble. If they make the
I tell
field.
you're shaking your head.
So if Chad gets to point out the Rutgers injuries and their bad loss, I need to save Iowa's resume here. So they were missing Chris Murray and Connor McCaffrey, two veteran good starters in that game, and they were up 22-8 and then completely fell apart. So if you want to only focus on the falling apart, yes, it was the worst loss in the history of the sport. But I'm
Yes, it
telling you
was.
that the
Yes.
committee's going to dig deep. And this one, I'm surprised that you have them out, Chad, because when healthy, they are
Chad
much
doesn't
better
have
than
them
that.
out.
It wasn't me. It was the numbers that did it. Remember,
Well,
this
I'll
was not
blame the
my
numbers
bracket.
then.
Like blame the numbers. If you look over here at the team sheets here, their resume based metrics tank, the KPI, the SOR in the 80s. The J&G didn't really penalize them as much as the other two did. That's one of the things that push them down. Let's take a look at the next 8 teams out plus 2 other teams that I want to throw on the board here also before we move on to the rest of the field. NC State, North Texas, Utah, Central Florida, Boise State, Nevada, Pitt, and Providence, all sniffing the bubble at least. And got to throw in there our current Stallings Award leader is Louisville, and our centenary award leader is Delaware State for the worst Power Conference of the
Wait,
worst.
Louisville's
team.
ahead of Cal.
Louisville has a worse OAR than Cal does. Yes.
Okay.
Cal off of that, finally getting their first win of the season. Real quick. Let me go to Titel. Let me go to you here. Any of these 8 more teams here that you think really should be up, maybe even in the field right now?
Nobody who jumps out. I think that the rankings back it up. I mean, I like Utah, and the Arizona win by 15 is going to carry a lot of weight. It doesn't need to age like fine wine because it's already Chardonnay. But I think that if they can get some good Pac-12 wins, which we'll see, I'm not giving up on this team by any means just yet.
Oh, I'm not either.
Rocco, anybody else either there or that even make this list that from any of the power conferences that should be here?
I mean, I haven't counted Michigan out yet, and I don't see them on the board.
They did not even make it the top 12 out. You are correct.
I
I'll
think
throw them up here.
they're plenty capable of playing their way into the tournament. And Jet Howard's a special talent with Hunter Dickinson. And, you know, I actually have, as sad as the Llewellyn injury was, I feel like they played a little bit better with the younger lineup right now. So Michigan's got some upside as well. I guess the next team I did have Boise State. They just took a loss to Santa Clara, which hurts them a little bit. But, you know, in the Mountain West is going to be a source for bids, I think. You know, New Mexico undefeated, New NLV with a loss, Utah State 2 losses, San Diego State, I think we all believe is a tournament team. So there you go. That's going to allow the Boise States of the world, Colorado States of the world to eat into those teams' resumes to pick up quality wins themselves. And you might see up to 5 bids out of the Mountain West because of that. And that's going to really make up for some of the Atlantic 10 gaps.
Interesting note that you mentioned the Atlantic 10. We have not seen an Atlantic 10 team on the board at all
Yeah.
yet.
Chad, I did have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you went down this far. A team that I thought we might see, although I'm not shocked that we didn't. San Francisco.
San Francisco was even lower than this. I'll pull them up on their team sheet right here. They were even lower than Michigan.
Yeah.
Here they are. They actually came in at 84 in the OAR. They weren't even in the ballpark.
Oh, wow.
With
Okay.
the Texas Arlington
wow.
home loss just crushed them. That's a
Yeah,
284
but I think that win at UNLV is exceptional. They also, while at home, blowout against Arizona State. I like this team. They had
the metrics do not
really
look. We're looking at
gross
80s, 90s,
loss.
100, 103 in the BPI. It was the metrics.
Yeah, the loss to
don't like
Texas Arlington. Yeah, I mean it smells really bad, but I think they're good enough to win enough to get themselves to continue to prove their metrics.
They got the Zags at home. They got St. Mary's at home. They got BYU at home.
Yeah, at Santa Clara, that's a big one.
Can you go back to the board real quick, Chad?
Yep.
I was curious if you had USC anywhere.
USC did not show up on the board either.
Yeah, that's a team I think to keep an eye on as well.
68, just below Michigan, just very.
And
slightly
again,
below
they've got wins over Auburn and CSU. The losses, I mean, Gulf Coast obviously looks bad, but I think you can overcome that with a good Pac-12 season.
Yeah, and I like how they've been playing.
Let's take a look at the rest of the 12 line here. First, College of Charleston did not even make it inside the bubble, even though they are on the verge of making the top 25.
Yeah.
Yale out of the Ivy League and Kent State are the other two teams here on the 12 line. Real quick, Salika, let me ask you, Salika, about this Charleston team. You know, OAR only liked them at number 52 overall, did not like them very much. What about your thoughts on them?
Well, if we're talking about some of their notable wins in the Charleston Classic, they had Colorado State as well as Virginia Tech. The Hokie win will get a little bit better. Kent State should also get a little bit better. But the thing is, had they beaten North Carolina, Charleston would have actually cracked the top 25 in the rankings this week. Alas, that did not happen with Carolina sneaking into the 25th spot.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. The number 35 this week in the coaches poll, they weren't even close in the coaches poll this week. Actually went down, believe it or not. There's that Kent State.
Well, you can thank the Dobos for that.
Yeah.
Look at the 13 line here. We have four
Love that
more on the
Kent
bid
State
winners.
team, too.
Drake out of the Missouri Valley Conference projected champion, not even coming into the 13 line. We had not seen the Valley. Also on this line, we've got Iona in a little Bob Huggins versus Rick Pitino matchup there. Marshall and Oral Roberts here.
I love that Marshall team. That Duke Marshall game would be a blast.
Yeah, that is your Sun Belt champion. For those of you that are thinking Conference USA, Marshall in the Sun Belt this year. Rocco, your thoughts on these four teams?
I could see all the 13 seeds winning.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, it's not even that far fetched. But I think I think it's a credit to how deep the pool of college basketball teams is this year so far. The parity's been amazing, which explains some of the madness of these crazy upsets we've seen. But Iona's a very solid team. Of course, Drake came into the year a very solid team, certainly a very solid starting five. I think Oral Roberts has adjusted tremendously well. Max Asmus even taken a little bit of a step back this year to facilitate more. And Marshall's dangerous with Tavion Kinsey. He's been there for like 80 years. He's probably going to win Player of the Year again. Obviously, looking to make one final run as a super senior. So I'm very excited about the 13 line.
14 line here, we see Liberty, St. Louis, UMass Lowell, and UC Santa Barbara. Titel, let me ask you, St. Louis out of the Atlantic 10, our Atlantic 10 auto bid winner, they're on the 14 line according to this. Have you ever, I mean, did you ever think you'd be saying that? Our first
Like,
A10 team there.
What's beneath under the radar? Like, the conference is fading so fast, which is sad because
Love this
as much as I want to go
conference,
to it, the conference tourney is no longer in DC. It moved to Brooklyn this March, but at least the Colonial stayed in DC. Yeah, I mean, that is like not a single digit resume. That's a medium double digit, which is what you have them at. The win over Memphis, I think, will age well. The loss to SIUE should age poorly, as it already is poor. But they got Yuri Collins, who's arguably, if not the best point guard in America, at least the assist leader in America. So I think that could be a dangerous matchup if they get it together. Travis Ford has a lot of experience in the tournament as a player and coach. And if Arkansas is still injured and not healthy, and playing in the Midwest, we'll see.
Yeah.
Now, the last time the Atlantic 10 got a seed this low, Xavier was the auto bid back in 2006.
But there
This
were
was when the Musket-
but there were at large bids way above this that year.
Yeah,
Salika.
yeah, that is. I mean, Georgia got a 14 the year they won the SEC tournament, but
Yeah.
that is it.
Greg, so what about these other three teams? Liberty, Lowell, and UC Santa Barbara. Any comments on any of those three?
Yeah, I like the Gauchos. I think they have a high ceiling. They haven't always played up to it, but they are dangerous if they get there. I think Gonzaga is probably a little bit out of their league, but they are a fun team. I like the Big West. And UMass Lowell, one of the better stories of the year. No real basketball tradition. Haven't been very good even by America East standards for at least the duration of Hoops HD. Having a really good year this year. And it's one of the teams that it's become destination programming for me just because it's just fun to see a team doing well that has never done well before. I'm a little disappointed at St. Louis and not Fordham.
No, it is St. Louis. They outrated Fordham by about 20 spots in the OER. It wasn't really that close. Fordham's metrics are pretty weak. Salika, the 15 line. We've got our Horizon League champion, Youngstown State, Montana State out of the Big Sky, Furman from the SoCon, a down year for the SoCon,
Whoa.
and SIU Edwardsville, our Ohio Valley Conference champion.
I think there had been some rumblings as far as Purdue Fort Wayne getting the Horizon bid. Now, granted, they're only 1-1 in the league so far. I'm going to assume that the Penguins have the best metrics here. This is usually a program that's good on the gridiron, but not on the basketball floor.
Youngstown State. I'll pull them up here if you want to take a look at Youngstown versus Fort Wayne. Youngstown's OAR came in at 131 to 123. Looks like there might be maybe an error there, or something got messed up somewhere along the line. But we're going with Youngstown State here. But let me not do that again. Yeah, we got Montana State, Furman, Edwardsville. Let's show up the 16 line here. And Rocco, we've got Grambling versus Wagner in one of our first four games. Northwestern State and American in the other one. Longwood and Norfolk State finishing out the 16 lines. Any thoughts on any of these 6 teams?
Yeah, it's fun to see some of these names. I think this is almost like a Hoops HD reward for a great 2 months of basketball. But I think, Northwestern State, for example, pretty amazing to see what they've been able to do with a new staff and all new players, and get the TCU win. Obviously gets them there, but I think them and Nichols will go toe to toe like 3 different times this year in the Southland. And I also think Norfolk State, for their level at the MEAC level, even though the MEAC's a lot better, Norfolk State's still a level above everybody, and that's a really solid veteran team that even at the 116 level that Kansas wouldn't be very comfortable seeing in the other side of the bracket.
I gotta say that I'm astounded that Northwestern State is this low. I think their resume is better than that, and I know we didn't factor in resumes. It's a metrics bracket, not a resume bracket. I don't think any of us would have them that low. I think some of us might have them many lines higher.
They got a couple bad losses here. There they are at 161 in the OAR, so it was not a good OAR number, and it helped
Yeah.
a lot by the net and the predictive metrics. The prediction, look at a Ken Pop of 266 on them. Yeah,
Right, but I mean, when you
number
get not one
303.
but two,
They're a sub 300 defensive team in the nation, Griggs.
yeah, I know their metrics are bad, but if you do a case study of how many teams are seeded 14th or worse with 2 quad 1 wins, it's not very many. I'd venture to say that no 16 seed has ever gotten 2 quad 1 wins.
Well, if they win at Texas A&M tomorrow here on Tuesday, I'll reevaluate them at that point.
You think they're a 16?
I think they're probably a 15 right now if I was doing my own bracket, but I would not have them. I don't think I'd have them in the first 4. I think I'd have Norfolk State down there, but and I think they were the top of
I'd
our first.
probably
4.
have them around the 13 or so.
Okay.
So
On that note, let me leave this up here and run through each of you for any other thoughts you have on what we did tonight, this bracket, anything else going on in the college basketball world. And Titel, let me start with you.
So the 2 bracket fun facts I have are about my 2 teams out west. So Arizona State, you have them traveling across the country to play a team called the Wildcats. And then if they can somehow win, then their reward is to play Alabama in Birmingham. So
Ouch.
thumbs up for that. And then in contrast, the Wildcats, I'm not too worried about Mississippi State or Utah State in the second round. Maybe I should be, but I'm not yet. But that sets up the Tommy Lloyd versus his mentor Mark Few game in Vegas, which I hope to be at. And I think that there would be a gazillion Wildcat alums and fans who would make the trip up to Vegas for that, as they do for the Pac-12 tournament every March. So that would be quite a scene, I think.
All right. Stalika, how about you?
I know UC Santa Barbara is the Big West team that we're showing here, but based on what happened last night, the Big West team that we should really be talking about tonight are going to be the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors right here. The first 11 games of the Diamond Head Classic, not really much entertainment value, but oh boy, did that go from 0 to 100 in the championship game right here. SMU had so many chances to close that game out. They missed a pair of 1-and-1s towards the end, and in the closing seconds, Hawaii hits a game-winning 3. But the thing was, it was kind of a freakish play in that they were fouled while hitting that 3. So as unbelievable as it sounds, SMU actually had one final chance to throw a half-court prayer in to reclaim victory themselves, but could not get a clean shot off. So congratulations to Hawaii for winning their first ever Diamond Head Classic.
First time they ever made the finals, even of their own event there.
yeah,
and
they
won it.
always make the event though.
Rocco.
And this was on the heels of a year where they couldn't even get the Diamond Head Championship in last year because of COVID between, I think, Stanford's program when they were supposed to take on Vanderbilt in last year's title game.
Rocco.
Yeah, so I would say, if you're watching this and a fan or part of the community of any of the teams in yellow, congratulations. There's a really good chance you're going to the tournament, especially if you're in the top 4 team. We'll save West Virginia and Auburn. They can easily if you're anybody else on the board, there you go. If you're anybody else on the board, it's a quick reward over the holidays that you've had a good November or December, or a good enough November and December. Pat yourself on the back, but the real wars are about to begin. And with that said, I would like to just call out a couple of teams that we did not talk about at all, that I picked to win their conference tournament, and I definitely even right now can see winning their conference tournament. That'd be Villanova of the Big East, a team that's finally getting healthy at the right time. They feel like a hurricane coming, so UConn might be challenged in ways that they haven't seen yet. And then you also have the Dayton Flyers of the Atlantic 10, really starting to play well the last couple of weeks before the holidays. Obviously, those 5 bad losses early on are not going away, but I think this is a team poised to do something special if they can keep rolling off of what they've done the last 2 weeks. So watch out for Villanova and Dayton.
Yeah, I would argue that none of Dayton's losses were really that bad, but there is no chance for any even a
Oh,
tier
100.
two win on
Yeah.
this on the rest of this schedule here, and that is
I
that,
do
that's an
think that
auto bid.
I
Yeah.
will agree with Rocco on this. If they can somehow play their way in, and they'll need the auto bid to do it, this might be a team that can go past the round of 64.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Greg, you want to finish the show off?
Yeah, I just wanted to first of all reiterate something that has been reiterated already. This was not a like resume based bracket. We didn't pick it. If we were picking it, I think you'd see some very big discrepancies between this and what we would have done. We're going to start our routine next week, I think, later in the week, Thursday. But it was interesting to do. Like, it just kind of goes to show you at this time of year, like, you know what, why teams are where they are in the rankings. I found myself, as you revealed it, thinking, okay, why are they a 7? Why are they a 6? More so than like the team itself in the matchup. So I don't know. I think some of these teams are, I certainly don't think West Virginia is going to land as a protected seed.
If you want to check out the bracket again, we do have it down
It's
below
down there.
here in the post.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, I do want to thank everybody for having joined us. On behalf of John Slika and John Titel up here, Rocco Miller, check him out at bracketeer.org, and David Griggs, I'm Chad Sherwood. Have a happy and safe New Year, everybody. We are off for the rest of the week. We'll be back next week with a Hoops HD report and Under the Radar. And I think maybe even starting next week, we'll do our regular weekly bracket rundown shows as well.
Mm.
Thanks for joining us. See you in 2023.